And she brings other women in. And she brings women in who are mentally ill. And she says, they're like I used to be. And I tell them that they need to come here and get prayer. It's because of God that I have my mind back.
Annie.
Yes.
It's good to see you again.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Okay, listen, Annie, you got to help me.
All right.
We go way back.
Uh-huh.
Okay? And I love everything you do. I don't know about everything, but most things that you do. And I get to see the Annie off the screen, right? Mm-hmm. Which we've been in movies together.
Yeah.
We have one.
I mean,
a movie.
Not at the same time, but we were put in the movie
Oh,
together.
we were
actually. Yes, we were. We were
Gosh.
actually we were.
It's like it meant nothing to you.
No, it meant a lot.
Did it? It meant so much to me.
Yeah.
So we spent a chunk of time together.
Yeah.
And I'm super excited that you're here.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Okay. You got to help me, though.
All right.
You got to give me more than like one-word answers.
Well, you got to give me some questions to go with here.
Okay. Christina. Text me good questions to ask your mom. No, I'm just kidding. We won't do that. I thought about that.
I mean, this could go in a lot of directions. So
I thought about asking your daughter to text me a bunch of like awkward things, but I decided not to because I really care about you. And I know your daughter, and she would say things that I bet would push some buttons.
I think she's watching to make sure I don't say things I shouldn't say.
You'll be fine. Do you have any, like, who's your favorite child? No, I'm just kidding. You just got in, and you're having your birthday. Or how long have you been in the States?
I arrived on the 22nd, so Today is the 26th.
Yeah, but honestly,
like
we shouldn't be dating anything because I don't know when this is going to come out.
Yeah.
We didn't say what month.
No, we didn't.
No. But
I've been here like 4 days.
4 days, and then you're going to have your birthday? What are you doing for your birthday? Anything fun?
I'm actually at an event at a church.
You are?
Presenting on Nightlight.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Which is your ministry?
Yes.
It's your organization?
It is.
And that sounds like a fun birthday. What's your perfect birthday? Like, if you could pick anything, what would it be? Money's not an option. Just tell me.
Maybe vacation at the beach.
Which beach?
One I've not been to before, maybe. I don't know. I just love being at the ocean, walking along,
East
enjoying
Coast,
time
West
with
Coast,
God.
international?
No, not the U.S. International.
Annie,
sure.
You're going to make me work hard for this
I
one.
am. You've got to give me a good question here. Get me started.
Okay, here's the deal. You're Annie Dieselberg. You had started Nightlife. What year?
Nightlight started in 2005.
Not Nightlife. Nightlight to help combat
right.
nightlife.
I started working in the nightlife, combating the nightlife before that. But Nightlight started in 2005.
2005. And what, if you could what's your vision? What's your mission?
Okay, the mission statement. Sure. Nightlight International Nightlight is an international organization compelled by love to reach out to, rescue, and restore all those who have been negatively affected by sex trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation.
That's the longest answer you give me yet. I love that. Okay. So you are, I would say this in the most respectful way, you are the OG, original gangster that I know of. I actually don't know anyone that's been doing it longer than you have. And I'm sure there are some out there. But consistently over years, like serving the Lord in Thailand. I bet you've seen a lot of ministries come and go over the years. Yeah. And you've stayed.
Yes.
Okay. And I've had the chance to go and visit your ministry. I've had the chance to minister there. And you strike the fear of God into me. Yeah. Yeah. I'm terrified of you. Yeah. Yeah.
You had such a big impact on me and us when you were there. It was a shifting. It was a pivotal point.
Really?
In the ministry. Yes.
We can talk about that another time. But you're there in Bangkok, and I nod if I'm accurate, which I am. Yeah, I get scared when I say something, and I get scared that I'm getting it wrong. So you're in Bangkok, you and your family. You have 3 natural kids and 3 that you've adopted. Okay. And how many women have you taken in off the streets over the years? Do you keep those numbers?
Sort of.
Okay.
Because we have Thai women who have come through the program who are employed by Nightlight, and that would be around 200 women who've come through that program.
Wow.
Then international women who were trafficked or trapped in prostitution in Thailand would be around 300 women. Those are the ones that have come through or we've provided some direct assistance to.
Yeah.
But then we also have outreach programs. So, we're reaching out to thousands every year.
Yeah.
So it depends on how you categorize it. But
Yeah.
women who've come through program, I would say probably around 500.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. And whenever I get around you, I hear the craziest stories. And maybe we can get into that a little bit later. But what made you get started in working in Thailand? What made you get started in ministry?
Yeah. Well, I really honestly think that it started because I was a missionary kid in Congo.
I forgot this.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So, for me, that really shaped a lot of who I am. And, I say I have an international DNA. I don't know if that's, officially correct, but that's how I feel, is that I have an international DNA. And my childhood was in Africa, so very influential. Watching my parents go to rural villages, living in villages, for the time period that they were doing theological education by extension, going to boarding school, and being witness to some instances of injustice that were really shaking. I think I was a very shy child. I would never do something like this. I didn't want to be in front of people. But when I saw somebody doing something that was really unjust, I remember seeing a guy on the street who was being beaten up, stripped, naked, just taunted because he'd been caught stealing. Yeah. But it was so horrific. And I was 13. I was at boarding school. And I had to speak out. It was a little bit, I was watching from behind a wall. Yeah. But there were a couple guys that were standing there, and they were laughing. They thought it was funny. And, it was a comedy to them. And I was so shocked. And so I just spoke out to them, and just told them, this isn't funny. That man's a child of God. And
that's 13.
Yeah.
And this is in the Congo?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, in French. And it kind of shook them, and they were like, oh, tu as raison, yeah, you're right. And I would say that it's not like my character on a normal basis to speak out, but anytime it became very much like my character. That when I saw injustice, when I saw people taking it out on other people, hurting, exploiting other people, something just rises up inside of me, and I forget my shyness. I forget, what I don't want to be because of who I need to be in that moment to speak out for justice or to help someone who is being treated poorly.
We're probably going to get in. Let me just say this, I don't know what we're going to talk about. I don't have a plan.
Okay.
But I do know we're probably going to hit some sensitive subjects.
Sure.
So if people are watching this have a hard time hearing about sex trade, some of the stuff that goes along with that, this might not be the episode for you.
Well,
or it is.
Or it is, right?
Okay.
How much does God want us burying our heads in the sand?
I agree.
Right? So the only thing is, if it would be triggering for some people, then they might want to set up their next therapy appointment. Or if they are sensitive about young children. Yeah. But I don't have to go graphic, of course.
No, but I do want to know. I actually would like to hit some topics
difficult
with
things,
you.
Yeah.
And just be open to share whatever you want. But I do want to say, sometimes this stuff is a little bit too much for some people.
Yeah, it's true.
And I get it. We all have crazy backgrounds, and and so this episode might not be the one for you, but I hope it is.
Yeah.
And I hope you do listen.
Yeah.
And if you do need to switch it off, just switch it off or fast forward.
I'd say ask God.
Yeah. So
if it feels uncomfortable, ask God why.
Yeah.
Because sometimes God wants us to learn in the uncomfortable, right? That's where it happens.
Why? I think talking about sexual things for the church, just in general, is uncomfortable.
Right,
but
which is why there's so much problem.
Yeah, but especially when you bring in, the hurt, the broken, those who have been abused, there's a tension there anyway.
There is, yeah.
Most people have a hard time talking about it.
They do.
And I don't. And you definitely don't.
And I'm a little bit desensitized, so I forget sometimes that what for me sounds less intense, normal, not normal, but normal in my life, to other people can still be shocking.
Yeah. So we have war going on in northern Mozambique.
Yeah.
And
horrible.
I mean, just today we were on a prayer meeting. Right before that's like 15 minutes ago, we were on a prayer meeting.
Yeah.
The stuff that I see, the stuff that I hear on a continual basis, the images, you do get desensitized to it a little bit. Yeah. But I don't want to be desensitized to it.
You don't want our hearts to be hardened.
Right.
But, I mean, I always think of it just in terms like what doctors have to see on a regular basis, right?
Yep.
I mean, any of us who aren't doctors, some of the stuff we would be like, running in the other room. But for doctors, they have to get used to seeing the stuff that they're dealing with on a regular basis, right?
Yeah.
Paramedics, the same thing. So I think sometimes in this kind of work, it's not that we're desensitized to have hearts hardened, right? But there's a certain okay, I've seen this. I'm familiar with this. I know how to react in this situation.
Yeah. Gosh, you have so much wisdom. I want to pick your brain as much as my ADD will let me. and forgive me if I interrupt you.
Well, that's okay. I mean, if your ADD kicks in, we can spin off in another direction and come back.
Okay, let's start off with this. What is define justice for me?
Ooh.
Biblical justice and maybe worldly justice or justice in general. Define it. Because definitions are important as we talk about things.
Wow, I don't know. What is justice?
Biblical justice?
Biblical justice is not equality in the sense that everyone has the same thing. And it's not entitlement. Let me start with what it's not. Justice, that's a hard one, Will.
Really?
To define it.
The reason why I'm asking, I think a lot of people look at getting into justice ministries, justice works. Yeah. They have a fight in their heart for justice, right? And they try to find that in the church. They try to find it in missions. They try to find it, and I'm always amazed at hearing people who've been doing it for a long time, working in quote unquote more justice ministries, which I don't like that term sometimes, but I'm going to use it just for the sake of the conversation.
Sure. Yeah, I think why it's so hard for me to define it is because it varies on the situation. I think that's why it's hard for me to pin it down. I'm one of those people, I do not like boxes.
Yep.
And for me, there's always like a gray area. There's always, this edge where something doesn't fit anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm not great with definitions. But I would say justice is what God intends for people to have.
Yeah.
And that things are set up in such a way that they are able to access it, to attain it, to know what's theirs, what God has for them.
Wow.
From a biblical perspective.
Okay.
Right? So I think there's a lot of fighting, there's a lot of vocabulary, there's a lot of language around what's just and what's unjust, and a lot of it is emotional, a lot of it is trendy, but not necessarily, like you can't take a cookie cutter formula and put it across the board.
You can't.
No.
You can't.
And I'm continually challenged in my work because people that I work with are always outside the box of normal society standards. So I'm always being challenged, like, what does it look like for this person in this situation?
Okay. Would you recommend people get involved in trafficking, child rescue work as a ministry? I get asked this question all the time.
Yeah.
Like, how many feel called? And I'm telling you, 25% of the room responds yes.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I would say absolutely yes, but in what area, what degree? I don't think that it's I think part of the problem of today is that people think that, well, that's for you, this is for me. Compartmentalizing, we're great at compartmentalizing, right? Who should do what? But I think that actually, if we want to see change come, then everybody sees themselves as a part of it, of either you're part of the problem or you're part of the solution, or you're so neutral that, in a sense, you're still part of the problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think that everybody should find a way to be involved, whether it's using your voice, your money, or whether it's being on the front lines, or whether it's being in the money, like the accounting side or the admin side, or even like teachers at school. You know, what can they do to make a difference for the young people that are vulnerable? The neighbors, the shopkeepers. What are the shopkeepers selling? What do they see? What do people in hotels see? What do the medical field? You know, you hear of people, women who are trafficked, who come into the ER and they're trafficked. And so there you have medical professionals who have the opportunity to make a difference.
Yeah.
So it's not something that should be so compartmentalized that we say it's on the field in Thailand, on the streets, you know, in the red light area. You know, if you're in the red light area, then that's your thing. You should get involved. It's like we don't know where it's happening, but always being aware of God's call to see, to respond according to the gifts and resources that God has given us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so take me from 13-year-old Annie yelling at some dude in French.
I didn't yell. But
Parlez-vous français?
I probably gave him some eyes.
Je m'appelle Will. To 2005, going into Thailand. That's
a long journey.
I'm trying to get the age thing still. No, I'm just kidding. I'm doing math. No, I'm just kidding. What was there a time when you felt the call of the Lord? Just walk me through, like, what got you to Thailand?
Yeah. I think there was always a call. I always wanted to respond to God and to see things happen through God. A lot of faith, I would say. Growing up in Africa.
Yeah.
A lot of faith. But then I moved to the U.S., to the East Coast, to Vermont. And that was a bit of a shock to my system. Completely different world. And yet there I grew a lot, I think. I think sometimes I find that missionary kids, we have our own comfort zone.
Yeah.
And our comfort zone is living overseas in a missionary community.
What do they call them? Third
culture kids.
Third culture kids.
Yeah. But you can be completely sheltered in a missionary kid environment. That's your world. So for God to pull me out of that world that I knew and loved, it was everything that I knew and loved, and throw me into a public high school in Vermont was a shock. But it was a growing edge for me because I had to learn how to love people who were not missionary kids, who were not the locals that we came to know and love and minister with, you know, alongside of. But it was teenagers who were using bad language. Yeah. That I wasn't familiar with, and going out and partying and drinking and suicidal things, and just it was a whole different world for me, and it stretched me. And yet even there was that calling. You know, it was the girl, the teenage girl who was caught stealing and was being taunted by the other classmates. And she ran in the bathroom in tears because they were all just like coming after her like a mob almost. And for me, that was unacceptable. And so I ran in the bathroom, you know, got a coin to unlock the stall door so I could go in there and talk to her. And she was crying and be her friend through the day as she had to go and face, you know, the different things in school, like with administration, and kind of became then a mentor to her. So, you know, even there, it was like seeing, okay, wait, these are the people that are being picked on.
Right.
These are the ones that aren't being seen or loved or valued for who they are. And so I, even at that age as a young teenager, I was looked at as kind of like a mother figure in many ways. And then we got pulled up again and moved to Thailand. And
how old were you when you moved to Thailand?
And when I moved to Thailand, I was 16.
Okay. Let me just ask a question. You've talked about your journey of faith, which it sounds like it's just been there.
Yes.
Do you remember how young you were when you met the Lord, or do you have any recollection of that?
No, I don't have a recollection of the age when, you know, I probably said the prayer so many times as a kid, right? Growing up in that environment, we practiced it at home, you know.
So you've always known him.
I've always known it.
I love that.
And I saw it, like, because I loved going to African villages and seeing things there and hearing stories, you know. I would say boarding school was a bit of a stretch for me, but then again, that was also where I remember as a young teen being challenged, like, am I really saved? Do I need to say the prayer, you know?
What boarding school did you go to?
It was actually a boarding home, hostel, in Kinshasa, And then we went to
I'm sorry,
Tassoc.
in Vermont.
In Vermont, I
Did
didn't go
you
to boarding
okay,
school.
okay.
I lived.
I think my father was in Vermont.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was New Hampshire at a boarding school. So I was
there are
trying to
boarding
see-
schools there,
Rumsey,
but no,
I think
that was with
yeah.
my family. My dad was pastoring a church in Vermont.
Okay, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
That's okay, no problem.
Yeah,
Take me
I was
back.
just trying to. I was just trying to see if you guys would have crossed paths, because we were all from that area as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so boarding school in Kinshasa. Then 16, you move to.
So boarding school in Kinshasa, moved to the U.S. when I was 13.
Okay.
And lived in the U.S. until I was 16.
Yep.
And then moved to Thailand, to Chiang Mai, Thailand, where my dad pastored a church, international church there. There was no high school, so I homeschooled some, and then went to boarding school in India, and graduated from high school in India.
While your parents are living in Thailand.
Yes.
How many languages do you speak?
How many languages have I studied, or how many languages I speak right now?
Like
I feel fluent in 2, but
how many could you like kind of get by? Like if you were visiting the country, you could get by.
3, maybe. I mean, I can understand parts of different languages, and I like to study languages, but
Gosh, you're incredible.
no, not so much.
Yeah, you
but.
are. Listen, you're incredible. Okay, so you go to India. What makes you go, like, walk us through the process of getting there to 2005 when you go back?
So India, actually, boarding school in the Himalayas was where I was baptized in the Holy Spirit.
What happened?
I was hungry. You know what happened? It actually, when I lived in Vermont, and Vermont is, you know New England.
Yeah.
And I read a book, Appointment in Jerusalem, Lydia Prince. And it was an eye-opening that, wow, these, like, speaking in tongues, encountering God in ways that I actually hadn't heard that before. I'd heard of miracles, but I hadn't actually, I mean, of course, in the Bible, but I didn't know anyone that had actually could articulate that. And, like, here I was reading this story, and it just, like, floored me, like, wow, that's amazing. And then in Chiang Mai, I attended this prayer and praise group where there were some missionaries who were in the charismatic, and they were singing and praying in tongues, and that was pretty cool. So I had a hunger for it. And here I am in the Himalayas, and my friend and I, we both wanted it. So we would go out to the mountain and just kind of sit there, like, waiting for something to pop out and happen. And it wasn't happening that way. And then I read another book that basically just said, ask God and just start praying. So I went to my room, got down on my knees, and that's what I did. And then came this language. And it was beautiful. And the next day, I was in Hindi class, my Hindi class, and the teacher was talking about King Akbar. And I was like, excuse me, what does that mean, Akbar? And he said, oh, Akbar is Sanskrit and it means great. And that was one of the words that had been coming out over and over.
Come on.
The day before when I was baptized in the Holy Spirit and got the gift of tongues. And so it was just like this confirmation that just blew me away.
So cool.
Yeah.
And do you remember a shift, like, in your heart, your desire to go and serve at that moment of
No.
No?
I mean, even there, I was reaching out to people who were falling between the cracks. But then I moved back to the U.S., to college, where I met Jeff.
Shout out to Jeff. Jeff took me to the best steak dinner I'd ever had in my life. I will never forget that night. Anyway.
And I was part of a charismatic little group there at this Baptist college in West Virginia. So I got to practice it some. And then we went to a Baptist theological seminary where I took a few classes, but mostly I was working, and Jeff was in school. And sometimes we jokingly look back to that as cemetery. I would say one of the driest periods of my life.
Really?
I didn't know anybody else who, in the charismatic stream there, just a lot of head knowledge, and it felt very dry. And then we moved to a Baptist church where we were on staff, and that was life-giving.
Yeah.
It really was. It was life-giving. And I began to grow more in my gifts and things. But again, there was no expression, no way for me to express it. I think Jeff jokes. I don't know if it's true. I don't want to say that's true, but he says that I'm the first one to raise my hands at that church.
I love it.
But it wasn't where the church was.
Right.
And so I felt very alone in that. And at this point, I had not lived anywhere more than 4 years at a time.
Okay.
And as we came on the 4th year of being at that church in Illinois, then we got a call to missions.
Wow.
To serve in Bangkok, Thailand, in urban
Do you have any
ministry.
kids at this point?
We had 3 kids at this point.
So all 3, how old were they?
5, 4, and 18 months.
5, 4, and 18 months.
Yes, and 2 of those kids had heart surgeries the summer before we left for the mission field.
Really?
Yes. Christina
Okay.
being one of them.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Fun fact.
Open heart surgery, yeah.
Let's go. Now she has the most open heart I know. She's incredible. That was dumb. Okay. So you guys move out, 3 little kids.
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell a young mother who wants to get into missions that has kids? We deal with this all the time in
Yeah,
Iris. What's the best piece of advice you could give them?
Bring them along. Be present with them. Open their eyes bit by bit. So don't over-shelter them. I think it's healthy there are a lot of missionary kids, some who get really burned and, right, really almost destroyed through it, right?
Yeah.
So there's no guarantees. Even in one family, my own family, we had 4 kids growing up, and, some of them were, like, really wounded, and some of us thrived.
Yeah. I see that the same in the States, though.
It
with
is.
families.
Well, that's
like,
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd say don't try to shield and overprotect them. And yet, I would say, I think, I learned a lot. I would say with my youngest 2 kids, I'm so much more aware of spiritual warfare.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say going out in the mission field with kids is to take it very seriously.
Yeah.
That there is a battle. There is a battle for our kids, no matter if you're in the U.S. or overseas. There's a battle for our kids, right?
Yeah.
And so being aware of that and learning how to pray for them, not being so naive to think that just because you're a missionary family, that you're a Christian leader, that you're kind of under this bubble, for your kids. I think a lot of people go to the mission field and end up falling or getting burnt or hurt, casualties, because they don't realize the war, the spiritual war that's going on. And so being aware of what's in the culture even, and knowing how to pray to, like, the sheltering of our kids isn't sheltering them in terms of what kind of house do you live in, or what kind of experiences do they have. It's not like they're going to get kidnapped or something like that. But to me, it's all about the spiritual war that's going on around, and that's where you have to be prepared to fight for them.
Wow. So what does that look like?
For me now, it looks like a lot of praying in tongues.
Yeah.
A lot of declarations.
Mm-hmm.
Communion, daily pleading, applying the blood of Jesus to my kids, to their identity, to their sexuality, to their relationships.
They saw everything, heard everything.
Well, I hope they don't see and hear everything.
I mean, you can't not be around.
I have a hard
time.
Kids, yeah.
I have a hard time keeping my kids away from, like, just the pastoral side, and, like, hey, we're dealing with this. Like, they have ears, they hear.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, my wife and I are talking, they're hearing things.
Yes.
Whatever it is, like, they see things.
They do. Yep.
And so, I mean, your kids must have been around a lot of that.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
And trying to find that balance between how much exposure. Like, I want my kids, like when my kids, some of them, like Christina and the younger 2, probably more so, like I would bring down to the red light area.
Yeah.
And let them sit at the table with women and transgenders who are in prostitution. And, I'm not introducing them to, here's a prostitute.
Yeah.
It's just like, here's Nok, and, we're going to sit here for a while and we're going to hang out and, know them as people.
Yep.
But then I also do share some stories, not necessarily Nok's story, don't want to reveal too much, there's some confidentiality. But then again, these are the stories. And some of it, helping my kids to process that and to walk through it and knowing what they're ready for. But I think our kids can actually handle a lot more than we give them credit for.
I have a theory because I look at our kids in Iris, and I know there's some outliers, but I would say that the lion's share of our families that have their kids on the field, their kids are doing amazing. They like love the Lord, which it seems opposite to a lot of the stories that I heard growing up, like, you know, MKs, missionary kids, third culture kids, like they go crazy. And here's my theory. The parents aren't hypocrites, right? And I think when you live a hypocritical life, like you go to church on Sunday and then your life doesn't look like it, like that.
Yes.
Or you go to a nation as a missionary, but you're not there to do the gospel, you're there to do a work, right? A justice work, just alone, you know, and you're not preaching the gospel. Like I think kids see the hypocrisy, the authenticity of like what they're saying versus what they're doing. And but when their parents are modeling a life laid down in love for Jesus, like they can deny things, but they can't deny the passion and the zeal and the authentic way that their parents are moving.
Right.
And I think that draws children in.
Well, I think also teaching kids to how much we have to depend on God.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the hard things, like for me, like when I live in the U.S., I don't, like even just coming here on this trip, it feels like I can like let down. Like I don't have to have my guard up.
Yeah.
Whereas on the mission field, in the environment that I'm dealing with, I know that there's witchcraft around all the time, and the environment is so intense. So there's always like put on the armor of God. Like, I know the need for it. I don't leave the house without putting on the armor of God. And our family, we do it together every morning. But when I come to the U.S., it's a little bit more like, oh yeah, I need to put on the armor of God. Yeah. I don't feel it in the same way. But I think that, I want my kids to grow up learning how to use the tools. Because I think we overprotect kids, and then our kids don't know how to deal with stuff. Right. But I think if they see us, one, modeling it, but two, also like what you were saying, seeing that authenticity. But I think that one of the key points there is that they get to see it. Yeah. So if there's a missionary family and the dad goes off, which is very common, and does his work, and then the kids are sheltered, whether they're homeschooled or go to a nice little international school, around people, kind of similar thought, they're not necessarily seeing that authenticity. But if they can go with their dad, with their mom to the village and see them at work, their parents aren't perfect. We're not perfect, obviously, right? We make mistakes. But they get to see God at work. Right. And that they can't deny. You can't. No. They might question, whether we're right or wrong and our thoughts and, what we want them to do and live their lives or things like that. But when they actually see God at work, they can't deny it. Undeniable.
And they can't deny that their parents are they're doing it. They're not, it's not talk. Right. It really is. And I think just living that way, that's why I think so many of our kids, at least in Iris, they passionately serve the Lord. And I mean, I look at your daughter, Christina, who's doing the exact same thing. Yes. She's incredible.
I love her.
Yeah, she's amazing. Yeah, we love her too. And she's incredibly well known in Iris. Let's talk about Thailand for a second. How did you get started in trafficking? Is that why you went? Or anti-trafficking? Sorry, I apologize.
We don't actually do trafficking.
Anti-trafficking. Anti. Okay. How did you get started? That was the worst.
How did I get started in anti-trafficking? Well, so remember I lived in Thailand before. Yeah. And so there was an organization that was in the north of Thailand. It actually hadn't started when I lived in Thailand, but it started, it was in its beginning stages. There were hill tribe women that were being caught up in prostitution, being sold and trafficking. And so I was very aware of that. And so when we went to Thailand, that was already on my mind, of women in prostitution. Now, trafficking wasn't a term yet. Anti-trafficking wasn't a trend yet. Okay. So that vocabulary wasn't even really there. But prostitution was becoming a little more dealt with, I should say, a little more exposed. And so when we moved to Thailand, I didn't know what I was going to be doing. I grew up as a missionary kid. I loved living overseas. I loved being in international cultures. But I didn't know what my calling was yet. really. And we went to language school for over a year. We would, I guess I should back up a little bit. We stayed in a guest house as we were looking for housing, and there was a brochure on the bulletin board, and it was for a local ministry, one of the pioneering ministries working with women in prostitution. And I remember I would just stare at that brochure and just be like, wow, like, that's a dream job. I assume that a lot of people feel that way, but I found out not everybody does. But just like, wow, I mean, like, if you have a passion to help people who fall between the cracks, like, that's it. Like, there it was, just staring at me, from the bulletin board. But we went followed the traditional model that we were supposed to follow, went to language school, were assigned to a local church that was established, expected to fill traditional missionary role models, and I was the wife of the missionary. That's not how my organization looked at it, but the church, that's how they saw it. Was like I was the extra, the 2-for-1, and they wanted me to be their Sunday school superintendent, and I was like, I'm sorry, you speak Thai better than I do, why don't you do that? That's not me, and so it took a while for me to find my niche. And as we were going to language school, we actually would walk through the red light area. And I would see these women standing there and just look in their eyes and just felt this pull to them. But it still wasn't a reality. It was just kind of a longing. And we were assigned to this local church. I taught English, to preschoolers and did nice little crafts, and that just wasn't fulfilling my calling. And then I met Pawn, who's today is my co-leader.
Yeah.
And she was the director of Compassion International Ministry there at that church. And so I started coming alongside her, working with her, going to slum communities, and just supporting her. But then I got to see like these teenage girls dropping out, being mistresses, getting into prostitution, getting pregnant, drug dealers, drug runners, and we started talking about like, wow, how do we make a difference? What do we do here? In that time period, I got connected to someone who was working for this ministry that was in that brochure, that ministry. And I told her, I said, I love what you guys are doing. Like I would love to do something like that rather than serving at this Baptist church.
Right.
And she was like, oh, well, come along then, and we'll have a sweet time of fellowship in the bars. And I was like, really? Like, I don't think those words go together. I've never been in a bar before. But to me, sweet fellowship and bars are not words that go in the same sentence. And she was like, well, come along, you can join our outreach team. And so I had no idea really what I was getting into.
Right.
I'd seen a lot, but I was sheltered from that kind of an environment. I joined them and went on outreach with them, and I was shocked, especially like, okay, the beer bars, not too bad. But when I was taken upstairs into the show bars, it was another world of darkness that I had never encountered in my life. I was just shocked, and I was haunted.
Yeah.
And I know that, like, for days, like, the images, like, even in my sleep, just, like, repeating these images of, like, really? Really? Do people do that? They do that to each other. And but I started to talk to the women. I knew Thai at this point, so I could talk to the women and hear their stories, and they would open up and grab our hands, and we could hug them, and just began to fall in love then with these women as I heard their stories. And I mean, it just took over. It just took over my life.
You use a term called Showbar. Can you explain? So there's
different levels, bars. Right? So
I've been in a lot of like the main street, right?
Yeah.
The ones.
Yeah, where people are fully dressed and and compared to the U.S., modest dress. And people come and they order a beer or a drink and sit there and have conversations with the women. Flirt, play games, whatever, and then if they decide they want to take a woman, then they pay a fee to the bar, and they take her off campus, quote unquote, out, off site, to go and to have sex with her.
Yeah. Are the show bars like the one that I went to and filmed? But
You
the
would
ceremony,
not-
do you remember this ceremony where they anointed the girls?
Yes. Well, no, that would be
with like glass
so that's
floors
the
and like a
those would be the go-go bars.
okay.
Okay, so then the go-go bars are dance, where
Okay.
women get up on stage.
Do you remember
and
the one where they anointed them with the?
They do that in all the bars.
They
so,
do? Oh, okay.
yeah,
You sent us
a
to
lot of
one.
them, yeah. So yeah, I mean that's a typical ritual. So their women would be mostly like, let's say, string bikinis, and sometimes topless, or eventually later in the night, but basically dancing on a stage for like 15 minutes at a time, and then they come down off the stage and come and sit with men, entertain the men.
Yep.
The men buy them drinks, and then the men can pay the bar to take them off site again. The show bars are where they're doing sexual acts,
Yeah.
but not full on, but everything they can to take the imagination there,
Yeah.
right? Very raunchy, and they tend to be, at least in the place where I was, like the first red light area, very degrading.
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but it's like a circus act.
Yeah.
Like what kind of perverse things can these bodies do? And then people come in and watch, and honestly, like, you look in the men's faces when they come in those places, and they're not there. They're dead. And they've been so, probably, I mean, my feeling is that they've reached a level where regular just doesn't do anything for them, and they're looking for another level of bizarre sexual activity that can stimulate them into feeling like they're still alive. And it's one of the most, like, depressing environments to be in.
Let me clarify something, because I said I've gone into them. I've gone in for years. My wife and I would go to Thailand and visit Pattaya, which is south of Bangkok, and do ministry. And then when I've gone and filmed with Darren Wilson, we've gone in to capture different things on film. Usually earlier on, like we'll go like 4:00 before things get
really raunchy.
crazy. I just want to make sure people understand what I'm saying.
Where Will was.
Yes, but I have been in some very crazy places as well, all for the sake of ministry, all for the sake of preaching the gospel. I just want people to know that.
Yeah.
And I actually don't do it that much anymore.
Yeah.
Not because I can't or shouldn't. It's hard.
It's really hard.
Very,
it's really hard.
very, very hard. People get this idea, like, I'm going to go and do ministry, but I think sometimes we romanticize ministry like that. It's very, very dark.
Yes.
Like, I used to go minister in witchcraft festivals and stuff. Like, it's a different level of darkness than even going into, like, witchcraft festivals or temples and stuff like that. They're all dark, but it is a different level of darkness that I rarely experience. So I actually stopped doing it.
Yeah. And I actually don't go into, like, those places. I mean, we rarely do anymore. We do a lot of ministry in other places because they are, we take people with us, and I'm always aware of, people don't realize how vulnerable they are.
Yeah.
And, just how do you prepare for a place like that? And even women, like, people assume, okay, well, men can't go in there, but, women can go in there. But it's, like, filled with sexual spirits. So sexual spirits, are just, like, in there, even can work in women's imaginations and cause discomfort, or, try to take you places where you shouldn't be.
Right.
Even in a woman's mind or imagination. But it's so intense. And so, like, you go in there and you pray. And for me, the key is, in any of these places, it doesn't matter where it is, because those sexual spirits are everywhere anyway. It's just the level of perversion, right? But is having a conversation with the woman.
Yeah.
Because then the background fades. And then it's all about what God's doing.
Yeah.
And so you're focused on this individual. And then it's a divine encounter in the middle of a dark setting. Yeah. But if you don't have that divine encounter, you're not, like, talking to a woman and, like, personalize with her and getting into her life. We're not talking about her sexuality. We're talking about her life. who she is as a person. And then it's like it pushes back the darkness, right?
Well, one of the most transformational moments I have ever had in my life was in Thailand. It really shifted everything inside of me. It was one of the precursors for me leaving Global Awakening in like 2003 or wherever it was for, and moving to Mozambique. And it was on that trip where I first met you. And I don't know if it was before or after, because we went to Pattaya and then I think up to Bangkok.
With the Ladyboy.
Yeah. Well, that was Darren's film years later.
Oh, okay.
But before that, I came on a trip with Alan Hawkins. Do you remember this? There was
Global
4
Awakenings?
guys. No. This is just me and like 3 other guys. And we came, that was my first time there ever. I don't remember the year. It was right after I got married. So we're talking 20 years ago. So what is that, 2004, 2003, right around there. I came with a group of guys that I think they were like investors. They wanted to look at ministries, so on too. So we went to Pattaya, and then we visited you up in Bangkok.
Then it would have been after 2005.
2000, yeah, maybe 2005. It was early on, and in Pattaya, we did a meeting at a church there that was like meeting in a hotel. And before the church service, I actually have a picture. I'll send the picture. You can insert the picture here. Yeah, that's the picture. It's a picture. It says Big Willie's Go-Go Bar. And it was me walking back from the bars with about 25 prostitutes that we had paid for an hour or two. We brought them into a church service, maybe 20. We brought them into that church service, and I preached the gospel. I prayed for the sick, right? They got healed. They got saved. And I was so flipping excited. I was like 21, 22, something like that, maybe 23. I don't know. I got so excited and finished the service. They gave testimonies, and then I watched them get out, leave, and go right into cars with people. And it shook, like I wept for days. It shook me to the core, because everything that I had been trained to do was preach the gospel, cry out for miracles, signs, and wonders, and that was enough.
Yeah.
That was enough. And it just shook me to the core, where I was like, I need to go back onto the field. And that was one of the major seeds that took me back into the missions, back in the missions field where my wife and I moved with Heidi and Roland in northern Mozambique. Can you talk to me about that? Like, it's more than just preaching.
Absolutely.
And what can you talk about some of that process? Because I know you preach the gospel and you see people get saved. Like, what's the process there?
It really is living life with them. It's building relationship, especially in a culture like Thailand, where there's so much fusion of religion. Every God is, basically, which God is going to serve your purpose today, and what combination of spirits and idols will, best suit them. So, hit and run mission is not that effective. I'm not saying it doesn't work, because God can use anything. We don't know what encounter. It can be a one-time, one word that can change a person's life. Right? But overall, effectiveness is not the hit and run mission trips. But it's the long-term, ongoing, building familiarity, building relationships, building trust, to a point where women not only say, oh, sure, I'll take your Jesus, but they say, actually, it's more than just adding Jesus to the shelf. It's only Jesus. And that process is a long process. It's not something that just happens usually overnight. And there's a lot of gray area in that God has really challenged me and my team on, because one of the things that we do is we have, I don't think we had this, I'm trying to remember, when you were there, we didn't have the coffee shop up running, right?
No.
And outreach center down there in the red light area. So it's an amazing, amazing place. And we build relationship with the neighborhood. And live life out there and get to know people and build trust there. But we have a beauty salon twice a week, and so women and some of the transgender, we call them lady boys. They call themselves lady boys.
Ladies. I got so much trouble for calling them lady boys.
Right. Well, you have
Furious
to respect
Love.
the terms that
That's
people
the terms,
use, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I got in so much
Yeah.
trouble for using
Yeah.
that term in the film. By the way, Furious Love. Furious Love. You can
Yeah.
watch Annie on there,
and you,
which I did. I said
Yeah,
no when he asked to film because I was like, I don't have a ministry there. Because all the
but
stories
people
were
are
from when I visited.
totally impacted by you in that film with the lady boy.
Yeah,
From Pattaya.
we could talk about that later. I want to hear about you. But you can watch that Furious Love. There's a whole section in going into Thailand.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're in there and some incredible
Yeah.
stories. But
Yeah.
forgive me.
Yeah, no, so we have this beauty salon, and women come in from their work and to hang out in the beauty salon. They have their hair washed, they have their hair dried, they get makeup put on, they have their nails painted, that we have food for them so they hang out and eat. It's a safe place for them just to come in and to be. And, and sometimes they talk about things that get a little bit crude and, try to redirect the conversation. We don't want them comparing customers and, how much money who's making and
Right.
that kind of a thing, or what kind of sexual acts they're doing. But it's a safe place for them to hang out. But then there's this, difficulty where they come in, the women, they want us to pray for them. They're not Christian.
Right.
But they want us to pray for them. And so they come in, they're like, pray for us. And I'm like, okay, what do you want prayer for? Oh, pray that I'll get customers, pray that. I'm like, okay, that I won't pray for that.
Can't.
I'm not
Yeah.
going to pray that
Yeah.
God sends you customers. I will pray that God blesses you. I will pray that you'll know God more,
Mm-hmm.
that the eyes of your heart will be open to really understand and know who you are to God, and that you'll know Him more. And I will pray that God will protect you from evil men,
Yeah.
from harm, and they're like, yeah, sure, pray for me. So they put out their hands, and I pray for them, and, they don't know what to do with that, but anyway. Then they go off to prostitution. And then they come back the next week, and they're like, pray for me. Last time you prayed for me, and I got more customers.
Gosh.
And we're like, all right, just a reminder, this is not what this is about. We're not praying for customers. And they're like, yeah. You pray for me and I got customers, so pray for me. And we're like, what do we do with this? God, what are we supposed to do with this? Do we say, no, we're not going to pray for you?
Right.
And then my co-leader, Pon, says, if we don't pray for them, they're going to go to the temples.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to go to the fortune tellers.
Right.
They're going to go to all the other places to get their prayer. Right? So we want to pray for them. But we're uncomfortable with this association that somehow we pray for them and then they get more money or they get
From selling
customers.
themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're like, okay, how do we disciple them in this? But they don't they're on this journey towards Jesus. We don't want them to think of Jesus as this ATM God.
Right.
So I feel this need every time to kind of remind them that, no, I'm not praying for customers. And now they know, they're so used to me saying that yeah, we know. But then they go and they bring their friends. And they'll bring their friends and they'll say, oh, I brought her today. She's not getting hardly any customers. I brought her so you can pray for her. I'm like, God, what do we do with this?
Yeah, what verse does it talk about? I think it's Lamentations. No.
All right, let me find it. We'll be here a while.
And this is what I love about frontline missions. We get some of the best questions are when somebody with multiple wives gets saved. Which wife do I keep? Do I keep them all? After they get saved, these things are not. They're not clear answers for a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
And you guys are really dependent on the Lord.
And these women are. This is where they are.
Right.
Right. This is their lifestyle. This is what they know.
Right.
So to them, what is a blessing? Some of them will start saying, "Oh, pray for my family," because I'll pray for their families. I pray for health. Other things, anything, but I won't pray for a customer. And yet I'm continually challenged by God, what are you doing in this? What is this about? And then watching them move on a journey where they're bringing their friends in. But one of them, one of my favorite stories, She's still in prostitution, but it's one of my favorite stories. This woman came and she was possessed. And she was actually out on the street. She had been coming to salon, but she didn't come. And the women were like, this woman's possessed. Non-Christians were telling us, this woman is possessed. You need to help her. And so my team took her. I think they took her first to a mental hospital, you don't call it mental hospital, that's not appropriate. A psychiatric hospital.
I gotcha.
And to see a doctor, and the doctor said it wasn't a mental illness. It wasn't that. And so then she came to the beauty salon, and it was total chaos because all the demons came with her. And it was kind of funny because she came when I wasn't there, and then I wasn't there, and everything was chaotic, and they closed the salon early and had everybody just leave because it was just chaotic. So I was like, okay, I'll need to be there next time. I need to see what's going on. And so I had this bright idea in my mind that, she comes to the door, I meet her at the door, and I'm like, let's see, I need to pick a name for her. Lek, you're welcome here. We love you, and you're welcome to come in, but your demons need to stay outside. And she's like, okay. So she came in, and the demons came with her. Yeah. And so they're doing her hair, and I'm standing nearby, and I'm just praying in tongues. And there was a seer who was there at the time, was on staff with us. And she's like coming over, and she's like, Annie. There's like black smoke coming out of her mouth, and it's just like coming out in the room. And she's muttering, like it's the demons are muttering curses into this room. And the environment was getting intense. And then all of a sudden, a woman who was sitting in a chair started crying, just out of the blue. She just started crying. And I ran to her, and I sat down next to her. I took her in my arms, and I just started praying over her, trying to help her to calm down. And then another woman started crying. And so one of my staff went over and sat next to her and started, trying to comfort her. And then,
these are women getting ready for the night in the salon.
Yes.
Okay.
And so then the seer comes over, and she's like, Annie, the demons are coming out of the woman and are transferring and attacking the other women in the salon. And I'm like, oh, really? Okay. So I had a visiting team there, and I said, all right, everyone, the evil spirit in English. I didn't want to freak out the Thais, so I just said in English, all right, everyone who understands what I'm saying, the demons are transferring, they're attacking other women in the room, and we need to battle this. But you can't just, these are non-Christians. Like, we're not just going to, make a religious show. So I said, we're going to battle this, but we're going to battle it in worship. So start playing the guitar, we're going to start singing, we're going to start worshiping, but worship with, to battle. Right. And so we started doing that, and we just like worshiping with all of our hearts, just like to God there in that place. And the women just like calm down. Like you just feel the presence of God just like coming into the room and then settling. And the seer came over, and she was so excited. She said, Annie, as we were worshiping, the angels came in the room with their bows and arrows. And that every time a demon tried to leave the woman, they would shoot the arrow at the demons, and the demons would retreat.
Come on.
It was so powerful. It was so amazing. And so I just prayed over this woman, just praying over her, and then until she was done with all her beauty treatments, and then I prayed her out of the room, followed her downstairs, out the coffee shop to make sure that nothing stayed behind, turned and came back in, and as I'm going up the stairs, I looked down at my hands, and it's covered in gold dust.
Come on.
Covered in gold dust. And I went back upstairs, and I was just like, look. And then the rest of the women left, and everybody, we just stood around just looking at the gold dust on our hands and just worshiping God. And it was so amazing. It was so incredible. So the woman came back, and I did lead her in a prayer to accept Jesus. And we battled for her. The strangest thing, these women would come in, and they would get gold dust on them. Explain.
Okay, so let's pretend that there's people here that have no idea what we're even talking about.
I think most people who would listen to this know what we're talking about.
You'd be surprised.
It manifests presence. It's just God's glory manifested.
Yeah, I've seen it multiple times.
But what blew me away was I'm used to hearing about it and seeing it in charismatic meetings,
Right.
Joshua Mills,
Right, right.
I mean, that kind of a thing, right?
Right.
But this is a beauty salon with women who are in prostitution,
Yep.
who are getting dressed and putting makeup on to go out and prostitute. And I'm seeing gold dust appear on them.
Come on.
And it's like messing with my mind,
Yeah.
right? Like, really?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, God loves them so much.
Yeah.
Like his presence, his glory is just coming in here. And so the woman, she got delivered from whatever demonic entity it was that was keeping her mind, taking her mind.
Mm-hmm.
She got delivered from that. So she got her mind back. So now, 4 years later, she's still in prostitution,
Mm-hmm.
but she's the main one who comes in asking for prayer.
Wow.
And she brings other women in. And she brings women in who are mentally ill. And she says, they're like I used to be. And I
Wow.
tell them that they need to come here and get prayer. And she says, it's because of God that I have my mind back.
Wow.
So it's just like a journey
Yeah.
to God.
Yeah. So often we love the instant, right?
We want the
We want
instant.
it. We want
yeah,
it.
it's like, okay, come on, you're out of it. How long
Yep.
before you look like every other Christian at church? Bringing your Bible,
Yep.
doing the things,
Yep.
the Bible studies. Nobody, could tell that you're a part of the world. But it's this journey.
My moment where like it kind of, and I knew it, but I hadn't seen it. Like I hadn't seen the going and paying for them, walking them down the street, getting to the service, listening to them give testimonies, watching them weep, repent, and then right back out.
back,
like
yeah.
seeing that just tore me up.
Yes.
It tore me up because I think in the West we have this view of like raise the hand, say the prayer, right? But the Lord says go make disciples of all
Yeah,
nations,
yeah.
right? And discipleship looks like something.
Yeah. It takes time to untangle all the mess of their past.
Yeah, and people
that.
people like on the flip side, how many Christians that have had chaotic upbringings spend years in therapy and
Yes.
counseling and years.
Yes.
And so like we need to realize that yes, God can heal in a moment. I've watched him do
Yes.
it so many times. I have so many stories. But I also watch a process and a healing process. I just want him. And I know you get to see this like constantly. So you're talking a lot about the spirit world, right?
Yeah.
And every time I get around you, we talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because I remember, I think it was one of the first times I ministered there. I don't remember what year it was. As I'm preaching, but like people started dropping to the floor and manifesting. And you're like,
Yeah.
you're like, time to go to work. And I was like, okay, like it happened. You have
fun.
done a lot of deliverance. Yeah?
Yeah.
What have you learned about, like, what have you learned in doing deliverance for so many years on some of the most broken, wounded people?
Yeah.
What have you learned?
How much God loves them.
Come on.
Yeah. And the power of the name of Jesus. So much. That the demons tremble.
Yeah.
Jesus is just so much more powerful, just the name of Jesus. And also the power of communion.
Mm.
And that's one of the things, like, I've recently in a church, there was like the communion was really quick.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is symbolic, and,
Yeah.
we remember Jesus, okay, now on to the message, And I was like, wow, that was like communion light. I'm like, where's the meaning? Where's the depth? Like, do we realize what it actually means? Like the power that it really is? And one of the reasons that I recognize it is because in deliverance ministry, when we would get to these places, we didn't know what else to do. Because the bondage was so intense, and the battles, and we would bring in communion. And the fight that those demons put up to keep that woman from being able to take that communion tells you.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just this little like light symbolic memory of what Jesus did for us.
Yeah.
There's something really, really powerful about it.
Is it Unbound or what's the famous deliverance book? Unbound, Unbroken. I forget, but it's basically the story. You know, it's a guy that's teaching on deliverance, and he used to work in an asylum, and he would come and do communion. He was a priest or I forget. You know, he would come in and when he would bring the elements, like it would just
they freak out. The demons freak out. They can't stand it. They cannot stand it. And I don't think most. I don't know, I'm sorry, I could be wrong, but it feels like in a lot of churches and a lot of Christian communities, like we just don't get how powerful it is. Yeah. If the demons hate it that much, it should tell you something.
Come on. Wow, it's the body and blood.
It's the body and the blood, yeah.
What are some like the memorable stories that you have over the years, like that when you just, you know, I have certain stories that I'll never forget. Like, what are some of the stories that have impacted you the most?
Gosh, there's so many.
Can you share some?
Yeah, of course I can. The question is which one and where are they? Because I have such a memory bank of so many stories. Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite, okay, so this is, I think I told this, I don't remember if I told this in Furious Love or if I just told you all, but one of the women who was interviewed in Furious Love is not currently walking with Jesus. Mm-hmm. It was interesting because I think maybe you or Darren actually kind of called it out. Not during the, like, it wasn't in the film, but that she would go back to the bars and then kind of tried to sanitize it by saying, oh, but to take Jesus. But actually, she went back, which was absolutely heartbreaking because she's one of my favorite women of all time. And I still pray. I haven't seen her for years. She went to Europe, but she's still like one of the main ones that I pray for. But let me tell you the story, and you'll know why. She came and she begged us to come to Nightlight. We were full. Like, we had so many women employed. And we were at a point where we were like, how do we just keep saying yes? Like, do we have room for more? Are the finances there? Are there even chairs enough for these women? But she was desperate. She was like, please, please let me come. And so she came, and within a couple of days, she was in Jeff's Bible study, which was, at that point, it was Jesus 101, like basically, who is Jesus? And she interrupted him in the middle of it and was like, who is this man? I need this man. And so Jeff led her in a prayer. She accepted Jesus, and she said, Jesus is my boyfriend now. And but then a few weeks later, like just a few weeks later, 2 or 3 weeks later, I get a phone call from her in the morning, and she's hysterical, crying. I can't even understand her words. And it sounds like she said, and she did say, I just stabbed my boyfriend with a knife. And he's on his way to the emergency room. What have I done? And she's just hysterical, crying, she sounds suicidal. I'm like, come in, come in. So she comes in to see me. She literally collapses in a chair, just sobbing, just losing it. And
when you say boyfriend, international John?
No, this
or just
actually was her Thai
okay.
boyfriend.
Okay.
This was a Thai boyfriend. And it turns out that she had a gambling addiction, which is what ended up like where she is now, having fallen back in, is because of that gambling addiction that she picked back up in Europe.
Wow.
But she gambled away, lost his motorcycle in a bet. And so they had a fight. And somehow in that fight, she grabbed a butcher knife off the counter. And she brought it in. We're talking a butcher knife. And whacked him in the back. And he had to go to the emergency room.
Yeah.
So she's like, what have I done? What have I done? And I'm like, okay, this girl needs some prayer ministry here, but I don't even know where to start, right? So I had done a little bit of training in theophostic, so I just was like, okay, Jesus, where do we go with this? Like, what would cause somebody, like people have fights, right? That's not unusual. But like in a fight with someone you love, you don't just like grab a knife, right? So where does that come from? And I just felt like it came from like something in her past, that there's that fear, that it was this reaction that she just like had to like protect herself or for whatever. And so I asked Jesus to come, to go back in her memory, to take her back to the Holy Spirit to take her back to a memory where she felt like she was afraid, being attacked of dying or something. And she went back to a memory where her mom was attacking her. And she was crying out in that memory. So I asked Jesus to come and to present himself, in the memory. And she had her eyes closed, and then she starts, well, at first she started doing like this thing, and I knew that was a demonic, a Thai dance ritual, a spirit medium type thing. So I bound that and stopped that. And then she started saying, there's a light, there's a light. And then she was just like in her own world with Jesus. And she was talking to Jesus, and then she switched to her personal dialect of Thai, not just Thai, but her dialect, and was having a conversation with Jesus. And she was just beaming in her own world. And I'm just watching, just amazed. And then she comes out of it, and she looks, and she's like surprised to see me there because she was somewhere else. And she said, Annie, Jesus came to me. And he took me on a white horse. And he put a crown on my head. And he sang to me. And I sang to him. She said, Jesus told me I'm not guilty. And she was like walking on air.
Wow.
It was just amazing. It was just so beautiful. And she walked out of there with her head high. Of course, the relationship didn't last. No surprise there.
You didn't take her to jail?
He didn't. No. He just left. That was it.
So he didn't even was the boyfriend there?
No, he didn't come. He was at the hospital. Yeah, but that was over.
She didn't get in trouble?
No. I mean, their life. This is their lives.
Wild,
These
Wild
are their
West.
lives. When you live in that world, you don't bring the cops in generally. You just deal with stuff, right? Them. Anyway, so she was like, she experienced Jesus.
Come on.
Right? And it was transformative. I went home and I was amazed. I was blown away by it. But I had this little question like, really, God? You said she wasn't guilty. But she brought the butcher knife in. She was guilty. She did it. She was guilty.
Yeah.
And then, I think for the first time in my life, that's when I understood the grace.
Right.
It's not what we deserve.
Right.
That Jesus didn't just die to forgive us from our sins, but he became. He took it on.
He did.
And in taking it on, he could look at her and say, you're not guilty.
Right.
Because I'm carrying it. And so that was, for me, that was a transformative moment of understanding what Jesus took on in our place.
Come on.
And how we walk in freedom and purity because of what he did.
God, there's so much. Okay. I want to hit you with some fast questions. Okay. Are you ready?
Sure.
I don't know if I'm ready because there's a lot. I feel like I can sit here and talk to you for hours. Why have you lasted so long, separate from spiritual warfare, in doing that and taking communion? Why have you made it so long where so many only last a small amount?
It's my calling.
Okay.
I see God at work. And I have faith and belief that God comes through. So even if I don't, the popular song, even if we don't see him, in those moments, if I don't see him at work in that moment, I know that he's at work and that something is going to come out of that.
Okay.
That he's doing something. And I don't have to see. It's not on me to see the whole final product.
Yep.
That burden is off of me.
Right.
And I think that's a big part of it.
Hold on. What do you mean? Time out.
So the responsibility that so many of us carry when we go into something okay, this is my work, this is my baby.
Right.
I'm going to see this woman completely transformed. Her life is going to be completely changed, and she's never going to fall again. And
in fact, every
this is
story
my
you've
job.
shared is not
That's
I think
it.
every single
Yes.
story you've shared has not been like.
That's most of the stories. Most.
How is that not like depressing at best?
Because God's still at work.
I get that.
It's
I
still
get that.
God,
Like, but
I
talk
think.
to me about this for a second. Like that, and I get it. And I've been around missions, and they plow and they plow and they plow
Yes.
and they plow and they plow.
Yes.
And then somewhere, sometime down the line, boom! It's just like an explosion.
Yes.
But like,
Yeah.
how do you stay in that? Like, because that for me, like the way that I'm built, it would be like going to church after church after church and preaching, and then God, you know, he just doesn't show up. Like,
So it's what do you
I would like
expect?
run.
It's what do you expect? God does show up.
I know that.
No, but that's the
Yes.
thing. It's like,
Oh,
what do you
don't give me that
expect?
technicality.
How is God showing up, right?
Yes.
So is God showing up and okay, now everything's great. Good. Whew, I washed my hands.
Right.
I did my job.
Right.
Done. On to the next one. Right? Or is it God is showing up in the process, in the ugly, in the mess that we don't get to see completely transformed on this side of eternity?
Okay, so how do you deal with that? Because so many people drop out of ministry, they drop out of their calling, they dip their toe in the water, like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And then they go and they don't see what they thought. How have you kept faithful?
With God, I know it sounds so simple, but it is just walking with Jesus, just knowing that he's in it, that he's here, that this is what he's calling me to, and feeling his pleasure, feeling his presence, feeling him at work. And I honestly, I feel like it's a privilege, but I get to be involved, even if it doesn't turn out beautifully. Like, we are his hands and feet.
Yep.
And his hands and feet were in places that were not beautiful.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
His hands and his feet were bloodied, pierced.
Yep.
Right? And so being his hands and feet doesn't mean that it's all going to turn out beautiful.
Right.
Or even most of it.
I love that.
But what is beauty? Beauty isn't that necessarily that she comes out, that she has a college education, and now she's going to speak at the UN on justice.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
That's one type, but that's what a lot of people's expectations.
Right.
They have this grand idea, which isn't fair to her, to be honest. Because we bring our expectations.
Why? We don't know what's better for them?
Oh, well, we absolutely do. Most of us do,
Yeah.
right? But when's she going to get it?
Yeah.
No, we don't, right? And what does God want for her? And what is God's enough for us?
Walk me through that. Is God's enough for us?
Why do our expectations sometimes don't match God's expectations? So, like one of my favorite stories is one of my hardest stories that honestly, so many people have walked away from, and there are times when I'm just like, I want to walk away too, until I see her again, and then I can't,
Yep.
and then I'm there again. She is not by any means by the world's standards of success.
Right.
So if she is never a success, is God okay with that? Here, on this side of things?
Tell me.
Well, that's what I have to wrestle with.
Yeah.
Every time that she falls back.
No, God's not okay with it.
It's not his will, not his perfect will, right?
Yeah.
I believe he wants her healed, whole, transformed.
But I know every person I know has those moments.
But they don't all look as messy,
No.
as extreme as they do for her.
No, because they grew up around the church, Judeo-Christian ethic.
Yes.
They know how to say the right words. They know how to pray the right prayers. It's a lot slicker. It's a lot smoother. But when you get with the poor, the sick, the needy, and the broken in their mess, it doesn't look like what it looks like in the church.
No, it doesn't. And I want those stories. Like, I am praying for that gift where I can walk down the street and pray for these who are mentally ill and demonically possessed and addicted to alcohol, and I will see them transformed in a moment. I want that.
Yeah.
I really, really want that.
Yeah.
And if it's not happening through me, then I'm like, okay, Will Hart, come do it. Because I want to see it.
I'm not the guy. I mean, I
could name people like, come.
Listen.
Like, I see you,
You're
you could do it. But this, I call her my Gomer.
Yeah.
And then I feel guilty, so I call her my Gomer Sozo, okay, because she's in transformation. I don't want to label her as a Gomer.
Right.
But I've had to come to this place of, what is success for Gomer? Is success that she will come to a place where she finally can stay at work for more than 4 months and sober for more than 2 months?
Yeah.
Is that success?
Yeah.
Where she stays on her medication, or, well, I mean, I pray for healing from schizophrenia.
Yeah.
I pray for it.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard Randy Clark's testimonies of women healed from schizophrenia.
Yeah.
So I pray over her mind for that. But right now, success for Gomer is that she knows where she's loved.
Yeah.
And she might be drunk. She might not be clean. She might pick herself off the street and come in for a shower. But she comes into this beauty salon space. She comes and gets prayed for. She is a believer. She gets hugs. She, for 19 years, she comes back for the hugs. She comes back for the love. She comes back for a worship set.
Mm-hmm. Come on.
Can that be success?
100%.
Even if the day comes where she passes from this earth into eternity, and I do believe that she will be in heaven.
Yeah.
And there she will be perfect and whole.
Come on.
Right?
Come on.
But I don't know with a guarantee that if that will happen on this side.
Yeah.
So can I be okay with loving her again tomorrow when she's disappointed me again?
Yeah.
And I see her face down on the sidewalk, completely wasted, disheveled. I have to pull her dress down to cover her because she's not decent.
Mm-hmm.
Can I pick her up again and walk with her again 19 years down the road? So those are the questions that come every day, right? Those are the things we deal with every day. But when she gets up and I look in her eyes and I give her a hug, then it's Jesus there again, right? Yeah.
Come on. Man, with the rise of pornography, I'm not trying to change subject, but I got so many questions and we've already gone an hour and a half. With the rise of pornography, what have you seen change in the landscape of the sex industry in Thailand? Have you seen major changes from when you began to now?
I don't know that the change in the sex industry itself, I mean, there are probably, there's more S&M, there's more unhealthy expectations. But in my world, that's always been there, in that world, right? So I would say that is having more of an effect in the general public in terms of shifting expectations for what can be asked for, what can be demanded, what can be paid for, right? Okay. And so it might bring a broader base of clientele to the scene with expectations that are just so degrading. I would say an increase of demand, but on the other hand, it's available online. Yeah. And women are easily bought online. So that is changing. I would say even just the smartphone has changed the scenario. Because where I used to walk down the street and the women didn't have phones, so they're sitting bored. You can picture it, sitting there bored, and so you catch their eye, you can get in a conversation easily because they're bored. Now everybody's on their phone. And they're not looking at you. Wow. And they're easily distracted. And they can say hi and go right back to a phone, to watching something on TikTok or whatever, you know? And so it's harder to engage with the women because of that. And many more are being sold online, so they're harder to access that way.
So you've seen a rise in just going directly online, and then they go to the hotels or they go wherever.
Yes, we also work with, what we haven't touched on yet today, but we work with the international women, mostly from Africa.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Who are being trafficked to Thailand, and
which I saw last time I was there.
Yeah. Well, so increase.
Really?
Yeah. So back then it was primarily Ugandan women. Right now
Yeah.
it's primarily from Tanzania.
Wow. And there's whole streets run by gangs.
Yes. It's now become a mafia like. Yeah.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, but in one sense I hesitate to even say it, because even in the Christian community, men go online, right?
Mm-hmm.
And are looking. So, anybody who's still struggling with pornography or all of this, please do not take this as an invitation. I'm also aware that there could be men who are like, oh, that's interesting. Let me go look online and see.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that.
And if you need to walk away,
don't do that. Don't
walk
do
away.
that.
Don't be a weirdo.
Yeah, but the market there's a market for women online, right?
Yeah,
we know that, right? And so that also can make it harder sometimes to access the women to help them. And this is not an invitation to men who want to be a hero to decide that they're going to go online. And
that's my next question. Yeah. My next question is, what's the movie that came out, Jim Caviezel?
Sound of Freedom.
A Sound of Freedom. Mm-hmm. Do those movies help, or do they hinder?
You're touching. Yes.
Yes, what?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I hear you.
They do,
It's
both.
Complex.
It is complex.
It is complex.
Yes. I would say, so there's different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
The anti-trafficking world, there's this network of anti-trafficking organizations, is pretty anti that movie.
The reason why I ask is because I know other people in the world, and I've heard a little bit of theirs. I want to get your perspective on it.
Okay, so I try not to be anti without trying to look at other perspectives first, at least, to understand. I did see the movie. It was an exciting movie. A lot of my friends in the anti-trafficking community refused to even see the movie. It is complex. So what I would say, though, is that what took place in that movie is not the norm.
Right.
And that's the problem, is that people see a movie and they think, that's all it is. Like, I've been doing this work for 23 years, and people that I knew who've heard me speak multiple times through the years, after that movie came up to me and said, oh, if you've seen that movie, you've got to see that movie.
Right.
This is anti-trafficking.
Right.
I didn't know that it was like that, but you don't do that, right? Because you only work with adults in prostitution, right? So that's not you, right? So all of a sudden, there's this compartmentalizing and this understanding of what is trafficking, what isn't trafficking, right? And it's so much more than that. And yes, there are children who are kidnapped, who are in, jungles of Colombia, South America.
Happens every day.
And there are SWAT teams that are being used to rescue those children. That is a reality. But I would say that is not the norm.
Yeah.
For the majority. And people need to get their heads out of that.
Yeah.
Because if everybody's looking for that, then they're going to miss the 95% other people who are caught up in other forms of trafficking, who may not just be children, who are adult women or men. Or, dare I say, the other day on the streets of Bangkok, I saw what I thought was a woman, but when I got close was a ladyboy. And I asked, where do you come from? Using Google Translate, which has become a best friend lately, pulled out the phone and said, you wanted to ask me a question? Translate, yes, I'm just curious, like, who are you? Where do you come from? The answer through Google Translate was, I'm Palestinian, Egyptian citizen, living in Saudi Arabia, on the streets of Bangkok.
Wow.
Wow. So where does that fit into Sound of Freedom?
Right.
Right? If people's idea is that this is trafficking, only this, then who's going to reach out to this person, right?
Right. I would also say, you know much better than I do, but we have dipped our toe in the world of child rescue. When I say we, different people in our organization have. I've done a very, 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 very small bit myself. There's a reason why police professionals only do it for a year or 2 or 3, and then they end. It is very, 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 very disturbing. Yes. And the people that actually have the mental fortitude, the ability to walk in that world. I actually want to ask you a question about that, if you don't mind.
No, but I do want to finish up because I don't want to leave in case, because there are people watching who on both. So with Sound of Freedom, I also saw it as an opportunity for conversations. Right. Right. So, okay, no, that's not the form of anti-trafficking work that we do. Right. And you don't need a personal SWAT team, or you don't need to be an ex-CIA or whatever to get involved in anti-trafficking and to help people out of situations of bondage and trafficking. Right. Right? That is not the norm.
You can just be a stellar missionary kid from
the
Congo.
You can just walk on the streets and say, hello, what is your name? Yep. Would you like out? Do you want help? Yep. And I can meet her somewhere, and there's no SWAT team, and there's no police involved, and we've had TV stations write us and say, we're coming to town and we'd like to film you doing a raid and a rescue. Oh, let me just put that in the calendar. Okay, it's just, tomorrow, 2 o'clock. Does that work for you? 2 o'clock raid? Okay, coming up, yeah. I'm serious.
Isn't it crazy?
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
Bless their hearts. That's what we say.
Right. Yeah. But you have to use so there's a reason. I mean, I may not agree with that method. And to be fair, I honestly do not think that OUR, the organization, operates like that. Yeah. At a ground level, because I know the team in Thailand, and that is not how they operate. Right. So it's not fair to just put them in that, peg them in that, what do you call it, keyhole or whatever, and say that is how that organization operates. That's not. Right. Okay? That was one man's story of his beginning into this thing, right? Yep. But use the platform for conversations. Right. People were seeing the movie. Yep. And, at the end of the movie it said, you can make a difference by buying a ticket for somebody else to see, right? Yep. Or sowing into other ministries, or ministries. Going down the street to the Dunkin' Donuts.
I'm trying to plug your ministry, like Nightlight Ministries.
Thank you, or Nightlight Ministries.
Or Dunkin' Donuts, whatever you. No, Nightlight. Yeah.
Yes. Or
nightlightministries.org. What's your website?
Nightlightinternational.com.
Nightlightinternational.com.
Yes.
We'll put it in the description.
We have new branding. It looks great. It's a beautiful website. Come see the website. And there's
People
a donation page.
People don't come for websites. They come for donation.
Come for donation.
That's what they come for. Okay, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I tell stories. I'm not great at asking for money, but God provides.
You're not. I'm not.
Thank you, Will.
I am asking for you people to sow into this amazing work.
Please do, because
I don't know too many spirit-filled. I don't know too many people. Everyone I know that's done it is no longer doing it in Thailand. Yeah. That doesn't mean that there aren't people. Yeah. Just the ones that I know, they're not.
There's high burnout.
It is. It's high, and you're the. That's why I started this whole conversation out saying you're the OG, original gangster.
Well, I'm not the original gangster, but.
No, but for me you are.
When you become, so this is my thing, people burn out in the valley. Yeah. Right? But transformation and growth happens in the valley. Mm-hmm. Right? And that's where if you can't find God in the valley, then the mountaintop, that's so temporary, right? Yeah. There's going to be another valley. So I've had a ton of volunteers come through, and a lot of people who just burn out in the valley. And say that this isn't for me. What happened to the mountaintop experience? Where it's all rescue and hugs and tears and we feel so good. And it's hard work. It is hard work. But when you're regular, when you know your neighborhood, then it's my neighborhood. Why wouldn't I be there? Yeah. I don't want to walk away from these people. Yeah. I know these people. Yep. So that's why I'm still there too. Because God loves these people. And they're not they're not a project.
I like to say they're not nameless and faceless.
They're not nameless and faceless.
Which is what a lot of people say. I want to take me to the nameless and faceless.
They're not an annual report.
What's that?
They're not an annual report.
No. They're not numbers.
They're not a bottom line.
No.
No. They are people with names and stories and they're people I know and love.
Yeah.
So if there's a valley, they need someone to walk through the valley with them.
Okay.
And they need to know that there might be a mountain around the corner and someone to help them to see that, to get there.
What I think I hear you saying is, don't make it out to be this fairy tale, right? Like, don't make it out to be this big fairy tale thing. It actually looks like everything, at least we talk about in missions, right?
Yeah.
Going, stop for the one, love the person that's in front of you,
Yep.
and give your life for that.
Yep.
And you might not see the fruit when you want to see it, how you want to see it, but you do get to see the Lord move
Yes.
all the time.
Yes.
And I love that about you. Like, you're the longest running minister that I know. And I know there's others
And
out
I'm
there.
only
And if
40,
you're watching
it's
this,
amazing.
you're like, yeah. And yeah. So, but you really have been doing this for an extended period of time. You're a wealth of information, and you've been there, you've seen it, you've done a lot. I would like to ask for a favor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ask a favor, then we'll see.
I want to bring your daughter in.
Okay. I told her you might do that. But
Yeah, I want to, just for a minute.
Yeah.
And so I didn't tell anybody I was doing this. So here's what we can do. I will put my chair over here. And can I just ask the two of you guys some questions really quick? So, Christina, Matt, I'm sorry. I didn't ask about this earlier. I didn't know that I was going to, though. But I would like to if it's at all possible. Is this okay?
Did you ask Christina?
I can. I'm not going to ask her. What we could do is look at her. She's like brushing her hair quick and putting on a jacket, whatever. Yeah. Just this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put my chair over here. I'm going to grab a chair.
Can I take a break?
You can take a break. Let's do that. We'll take a break.
Right.
So we'll take a break. You're going to be back in a second with a new guest. Yeah? Are you okay?
Uh-huh.
Let's do it. Giddy
yeah.
up. We'll see you in a
Okay.
second. To the magic of cinematographers and cinematography, we have two Dieselbergs now.
Ta-da.
Yeah. Listen, the last few minutes, we've been covering a lot of ground. You've been sitting off camera. You're part of Iris. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Christina.
First of all, slide that in. Come a little closer if you don't mind. You seem so nervous, Christina.
I'm not nervous.
You
but-
do.
Okay, well, I'm Christina, as
Yeah.
I said.
And you've been with Iris how long?
I did the Harvest School back in 2012.
Okay. And I met you, I think, one of my first trips to Thailand.
Yeah, when I was in college.
You were in college?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I didn't know. I thought, wow, okay. Yeah, you were in college, and I met you. Now you run with Iris, and
Mm-hmm.
you're getting ready to go places. You can tell people where you're going to go if you want.
I haven't publicly announced it yet.
Yeah,
but
you don't have to if you don't want to.
But I am moving soon to somewhere
Okay.
very exciting.
Very cool. And you've been sitting off camera, and you've been listening to your mom.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything you want to add in? Like, what did I not ask that I should have asked? What perspective? Because you know it all. Like, is there anything that you're like, ooh, I should say?
Well, I mean, there's nothing like, she said a lot, but the thing is like, that's probably like 1%.
Yeah.
Of the stories that she actually has and could tell.
Okay.
And like truly like
You guys seem so nervous
minuscule.
right
no,
okay.
I'm not
Okay.
nervous. But yeah, she probably could share about 99%.
now. Is there anything that
that,
just that you love, a story that you love?
that I love. I mean, yes, but they can't be shared on camera
Okay.
because they are inappropriate. And
Can you cut
Truly,
them out? Can you cut any of it out?
no.
Okay. Wow.
But they
like, give
are.
me something. Like,
Gosh, I'm
was
like
it
trying to think.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just tell you like my perspective.
Yep.
Dining room stories.
Okay. Like over dinner.
You guys, no, I shouldn't say you guys, a lot of people, they come home, they get dinner, they talk about their day, how
my
was work,
gosh,
how
I
was
love this.
school,
Yes.
school was great, had an exam, blah, blah, blah. Our stories were
She's
so-
like scooping out mac and cheese. Yeah.
or pad thai how,
Yeah,
drink,
yeah.
and she's like, yeah, so I fought the pirate spirit today. Here's my scar.
I love it.
Like, here we go again with the
Yeah.
pirate.
Yeah.
This was like, these were our childhood stories
Yeah.
where like, which demon did she fight today?
Yeah.
Who did she find on the street today?
Yeah.
This was like, these were our dining room stories.
Have you been physically attacked?
No, but threatened.
Okay. What's that like as a you're third generation?
Yeah.
What's that like growing up where you know your mom is hanging around gangs and making people angry and
Yeah. I've never really felt any fear about it. I think I never, like as a kid or a teenager, you don't really understand the full gravity of things. And I didn't really grow up with fear of that. And I think because we literally live walking distance from that, it never really registered to be afraid of it.
Yep.
I think, like as I get older, I'm like, well, maybe we need to be cautious about what's, with our eyes of social media, like we need to be a little bit, whatever. But growing up, I never really felt fear of those things so much because it was so normal.
Yeah.
And I also I think you just, like you were saying before, you watch your parents live it out. And so living it out means they're not living in that fear. And so therefore you also don't feel it quite as much. Maybe my other siblings have a different perspective, but that was my perspective.
One of my kids was, there was one time where I was threatened. It was kind of a death threat.
Yeah.
And I kind of took it lightly. I mean, I didn't really take it that seriously. I mean, the woman just came and sat next to me in this big case with Uzbek and basically said, next time someone kill you. Mm-hmm. And I talked to her normally and went home and wrote a little blog about it, but one of my sons, I didn't realize how much it affected him.
Yeah.
And I was taking it so lightly because I'm like, they're not really going to do anything. But I didn't know he was running home from school every day because he was afraid.
Buddy.
Yeah. So, sometimes just thinking those things through, like what, I can see like, the chances of them actually doing anything are slim, but for a child, they don't think through in that way. Mm-hmm. And so for him, it was a real threat because the ring was actually on the street on the way to school.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that one failure was a mom.
Just one? That's amazing.
One of many.
Just, that's...
The other day I took my two kids down to the red light area, the two younger ones, and there was a trafficker there. And there was this whole scenario thing going on, and I got involved and stuff. And and just like, kids, just stand over there for a bit. And then I was done, and they were like, wow, yeah, that's a little weird watching my mom standing there talking to
I love it.
Mafia person.
You're both of you ladies are extremely bold. I've watched you go into Chaos Nations and all that stuff. You live it on a daily basis. How has this affected your view of men? Watching all the Johns, how has this affected your view?
Honestly, I think in the early years, when I first started, I was like disgusted, right? But I actually really have a heart for the men. Yeah. And I feel like the brokenness is two ways. And to be honest, I see exploitation both ways. Yeah. Like because the women that come to us sometimes have relationships ongoing with foreign men, and I sometimes I see those men getting played. They're just an ATM sometimes. Yeah. And sometimes their hearts get broken. And I've had some really poignant situations with men where I just see their heart and their brokenness and their hurting. And one guy not too long ago who told me that he had to come see me and talk to me because of my faith. And he said, every month I put a gun to my head, asking myself if there's a reason to live. And I had to come see you. And I was like, don't ever do that. If that happens, you call me, because there is a reason to live, and I was able to witness to him and pray for him. Yeah. And so I see the men. Of course, sometimes I'm disgusted by what they're doing. Yeah. But I see the brokenness. I see the loneliness. I see just it's a broken world. Mm-hmm. It doesn't, whether you're a man or woman, there's a history behind that. And somewhere back there's a broken little boy who didn't get the love that he needed. the way he needed it, and so I don't think if it has changed my view of men, because it's helped me to see them more than maybe I saw them before.
Did you teach your sons anything different than, let's say, your average mom? Like, was there any like lessons that you were like, like growing up around it? Was there something that you taught your sons differently than I think most maybe moms teach their sons? Probably,
I might not have been necessarily aware, because yeah, I think because my kids went to international schools where there were kids from around the world who had different value systems, and also a lot of them many of them were wealthy, and so there were some views and perspectives that were spoken out around my kids that conflicted with what I knew to be reality. So I think in that way, teaching them, I would say more teaching them. I don't know so much. I mean, the sexuality thing. I mean, they've heard me talk and all this kind of stuff, and porn and all of that. But I would say more in terms of seeing how you view women.
Yeah.
And how you view
what would you tell
beings.
them?
Oh, I don't remember.
I mean, like right now, like working in it, right? What would you tell some kid that's struggling, like through pornography, male or female? Like, what would you tell them if they were sitting here in front of you? Like, I want your perspective.
Well, I mean, in terms of how you view women or girls, to see them as created in the image of God, and to not objectify them. Yeah. But that they're a human being with feelings, and looking at them in a purely sexual way is turning them into an object. And I would probably tell them the story of the woman who cut herself because she said she didn't know she was still alive, and she needed to see the blood and feel the pain to know that she was still alive. That's what, the objectifying, commodifying of women over time, it is like a stealing of their humanity. And eroding that away. So I would probably tell that, but I think it would be, if they're dealing with the problem, we need to understand where that's coming from. The loneliness, what is it that's, because just telling people are so easily shamed. And it's easy, even as a mother, I think, to unintentionally shame. Yeah. Right? To try to if you understand what this does to someone, then you won't do it. But I think my kids understand what it would do to somebody. So it would be more like, well, what is driving that for you? So then it comes back to them as a person and what needs healing inside of them. Yeah.
You've led a bunch of schools, right? I'm sure you've gotten into these conversations with students or friends or whatever. Like, what do you, when they ask your perspective and growing up around the industry, right? Yeah. Like, what do you tell them? Like,
in regards to
just like, I think you guys have such a different perspective, right? On pornography, on prostitution, on all, like, what would you tell some 15-year-old kid that's like, hey, like, help me understand what I'm seeing? Like, do you have a different conversation with them than like I would with my son or my daughter or my, like, what does it look like?
It's maybe elsewhere it's just the screen is the only thing separating you, but in Thailand it's like you actually see the people that are behind the screen, not necessarily those exact people, but you know what I mean, like the people that those images affect. And so I think it ties more humanity to the individual on the screen, and that does make a difference when you actually see the oppressed in person, in the flesh, and the effect that it has, as opposed to just this idea of it could very well, like, you just become it becomes just a TV show, for lack of a better word, or just like it's just a screen. But actually, like, we all know that as a human being behind the screen, that's not new news. Yeah. But the reality sets in more when you actually are walking amongst the human beings and you know behind the screen, and you know their names, and you know their mom, and you've seen them come to worship, and you've seen them raise their hands in worship. It just becomes a bigger reality when you've had a meal with this person. And And I think too, like something that separates my childhood from a lot of people's childhood is the just the spiritual aspect of it. We've talked about it a lot today, but my mom's always been very adamant on discussing the spiritual realm when it comes to this kind of stuff, and soul ties and all this kind. And it just, as a kid or as a teenager, maybe like, and I went to international school where this was not a topic, right? Like they had a prom night called Diablo one night, and I was like, not me, not today, Satan, like, and then I tell my friends why, and they're like, whoa, we've never heard that. But that's always been a part of my upbringing, is talking about the spiritual realm. And I think when you have that humanity tied to the spiritual realm, it's just undeniable, the effect of something like pornography can have.
Wow. If you could describe your mother better than she did and better than I can, what would you say? What are some things you'd want the world to hear about your mom that wasn't revealed today?
Yeah, she's fierce. She's fierce, but she's also very tender and loving, and she sees the human in front of her. She's great. And I don't want to cry, but yeah. Excuse me, but she's gotten a lot, like through the years, she's gotten a lot of flack, I think, from various groups. And as a daughter, it's hard to watch. Yeah. And so I feel protective over her and how people talk about the ministry and what she does and who she is. But I think that's the hardest thing, is people come in with this idea that they're the ones that are going to take over a vision or even have the right answer. And so it's hard to see that, like, the Lord has given her this calling, this vision, and she's the one who started it and planted it and runs it. She's the OG. Yeah, she is. And so it's hard to watch when people come and not understand that, like, she's actually just being obedient to the Lord and what she's doing. And we all make mistakes, and all of us are capable of hurting human beings. But I think it's hard to watch people come in and leave not appreciating what is happening there. Yeah.
It's like a stop on their journey. Right?
It's just another.
I've seen it so often, even in Iris, right? We bring teams over, and people have their idea of what they think that a ministry should look like to the poor, to the sick, the needy, and the broke. But none of them are doing it.
And they're not staying.
They're not staying. They might stay a year. They might stay 2 years. Yeah. They might stay 6 months.
They're not putting in the dirty work.
Yeah, 20 years.
30. Oh, 20 years. 30 years in Thailand and 20 in
like that's in the ministry. That's a life laid down. And it takes something very, very, very special. Yeah. We haven't talked a lot about your father, your husband, because it's who I've met, and him and I got together, like, we got along really well. What kind of man can survive in a place like that for so long?
That's fair.
Good question. I've always trusted that side of him. Mm-hmm. He's Papa Bear. He is. He's proudly Papa Bear. So he loves and cares for these women very much, as a shepherd, as a pastoral leader, teacher, very protective of them. I mean, he's funny. Like, if we're on a street, right? So some guy walks down the street and happens to is looking just like up, who is this person coming near these women? He likes routine and consistency.
Yep. So and a good steak.
He does. He likes good food, and we've got great food there. But so he likes, he's very good at teaching these women, and he knows how to relate to them. He knows their sense of humor. His Thai is excellent, and sometimes it's like leading youth group. Again, I mean, he does games with them and things like that to keep their interest, and he's totally in love with what he's doing. Mm-hmm. And it works for us as a couple because he likes consistency. He just likes to keep the routine going, the schedule. And I'm a little more like, I need adventure.
Yeah.
I need to go off and do things and get involved and be in the face of, what's happening.
How much longer do you want to do this for?
I don't know. I'm a third culture kid, so third culture kids don't like to be boxed into any decision.
Okay.
So you got to leave it open.
Yeah. It's just a question.
Yeah, well, it's a question that third culture kids don't answer well.
Okay, well, you don't have to.
No, I'm just kidding.
What is...
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think the thing about Nightlight is it's always changing. I mean, I don't want to continually be the leader or one of the two main leaders. I want to see people rise up to do it, but it's difficult roles to fill.
Yep.
And partly because we are international. We're not just dealing with Thais. It's not just Thais for Thais, but with all the African, Uzbek, Colombian, people who are coming in, it takes quite a combination of skills, to do that, or experiences, or willingness to learn, and longevity is also important. So it's not that I want to lead, until my final breath or whatever.
I'm with you.
But I want to, I probably don't ever want to stop caring for people.
Of course.
And reaching out.
Yeah,
to
you're never going to
them
stop
and,
doing that.
Yeah, it'll always change. I mean, it's always changing anyway. It's a thing about the nature of this work, anti-trafficking, is you have to, it's continually changing the face of what's going on. So if you're not, like a lot of people, one of the reasons that some ministries don't last is because they come with a program, they come with a structure already set before they even land on the field.
Right.
They've got it all worked out in the U.S. We're going to go over there and we're going to set this up. And this is what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
And then we're looking for people to come in to fill these spots, right?
Yeah.
But for me, it's organic. So it's like, what is the need in front of us? Okay, we need to adjust our program because this is the need in front of us.
Yeah.
And then there's a different need, but it's related. But we have to adjust again. So we don't get stuck in a box that says this is how we do it.
Yeah.
We look for what is the need and what is the response to the current need in front of us.
I love it. You guys, so you've come to some of our Iris gatherings, and we love it. You don't have an Iris logo on your door, but you do have one on your daughter's door.
And I have one in my heart.
You have one because we just love you. And it's been such an honor to have this time of conversation. Anytime you're back, we can do this again.
Thank you.
Yeah, but you gotta talk more. No, I'm just kidding. I'm totally I feel like I got you talking a little bit more than just the one-word answers. Thank you for the stories. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for a life laid down. You have done. Yeah, you amaze me. And every time I see your daughter, how's your mom? And she fills me in on how you're doing and what's happening. But if people want to get in contact, how can they get in contact? How can they support? How can they help the work that you're doing?
Nightlightinternational.com, the website, and there's a donation page there, and there's also contact information there. We have a branch in the U.S. as well.
No way. Where?
In Missouri.
Okay.
Yeah.
Springfield?
Nightlight, Missouri, yes. And my team there reaches out to women who are working in the strip clubs as well as trafficked women.
Wow.
And also working to support, like with Nightlight in Bangkok, we have a business side, right? We have a business and a nonprofit working together to provide holistic alternative employment to women.
Do you make things?
We make jewelry. We make we do sewing, apparel, beading of ornaments, and it's doing quite well.
And if people want to get in touch,
then there's another website, nightlightcollection.com, where the products are sold.
Okay.
And so ways of getting involved, to pray for us would be great. Honestly, like Iris Community Network, I feel like probably has a little bit, how do I say this well, is a good network to be praying for us. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
Because there's some understanding of spiritual warfare and the rich opportunities for God at work in supernatural, in doing things that aren't traditionally done. And I'm not a very traditional girl.
Really?
Really.
That's the
Really.
first time I've ever even thought about that.
Yep.
What is she not mentioning that she needs to mention?
Buy some jewelry.
Okay.
She
Well, that's
said that,
Nightlight
but-
Collection website.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. But you can actually go and do that.
Yeah,
You
do
don't
it
need to go
because
and
it
just look
makes
at
a
the page.
difference.
You can actually
Because
go and do that.
charity, I don't want just charity. We need the
I want a
donations.
profitable
Don't get me
business.
wrong. We need the donations because we want to expand, and a lot of the work is outside of the business. So, like right now, the anti-trafficking work is like full on intense. With the African women, really, really intense.
Yeah.
And so that's not being funded by business, right? That's nonprofit. But the business side, we want to be successful.
Yeah.
We want it to be a business model because it gives dignity to the women. And they don't just need donations. That's not dignifying, right? They don't want to be a charity project. So buy the jewelry because it's beautiful,
Yeah. So
because it's valuable.
if you have a business, if you have a coffee shop, if you have an online store, you can reach out on it's
Nightlight.
Nightlight
International. You can get supplied with a bunch of amazing things that
Yeah.
gives dignity
Yes.
to women who are coming out of the
And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful product. They do an amazing job.
I've seen stuff from like years ago. I don't know. I haven't looked
updated.
recently. Is it updated? What's your favorite piece? Not that updated. No, I'm just kidding. What's your favorite?
There you go.
I don't have a favorite. I mean, I have
She has
to.
a cute little binder of all her little jewelry.
Good save.
I have to
saw
keep up
that.
with all the new stuff, and
Yeah, you guys are
yeah.
amazing.
thank you. It's an honor to be here.
We just love you, and I'm so grateful. You didn't ask to come on. I asked you to come on. I begged, and because I've just watched you for years, give your life away for the sake of the gospel, and we, of course, Iris. Well, we love your daughter, but I got to know you guys before Iris. I got to know you guys from God putting it together, and to the point where it had such an impact on my life that my wife and I were actually going to move to Thailand. That was our original plan when we left Mozambique. And I got offered $1 million to start a prostitution rehabilitation center in Pattaya. And I prayed about it and felt very clearly the Lord said no. But you're doing one of the things that my wife and I thought we were going to do for the rest of our lives.
Wow.
I have so much respect for you.
Thank you.
So much appreciation for what you do. And it's been a real honor just to sit here and hear your story. And anytime you're back in town, I would love to.
It's
I
an
would
honor.
love to
Thank you for
have you back. Seriously,
Thank you.
guys, we got the Dieselbergs, and I know that this blessed you. I know that if it didn't, I don't know if you have a heart. So like, subscribe, and send this to somebody. Last question, very quickly. If you could take someone that's like, I want to go into ministry, right? I have a saying, called, not qualified. What are some quick qualifications that people can do if this is something, the path they want to go down, where it's more than just like a heart?
Oh, quick, huh?
Yeah.
Well,
Like go get a degree in nursing.
So, I mean, there are so many degrees that could be used
Yeah.
in the anti-trafficking field because it goes across
Yeah.
so many areas. So I wouldn't say that as much as it is having transferable skills. I
Yeah.
mean, don't think that you're just going to just come and just love and just sit around and hug people.
Yeah.
Right? You need skills that are actually useful,
Yeah.
whether it's business or social work or counseling, language
Awesome.
skills, writing, communications. A lot of ministries need help with their communications, with that kind of thing. It's not all glamour,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, that's the hard part is a lot of people want the glamour on the street. They want what they think is glamour on the
Right.
street.
And there's a lot of people that don't want to go out onto the street,
And
that
think
actually
that-
want to help and
But
serve.
they think they don't have,
Do you need anyone?
we need those.
What do you
yeah.
need?
We need admin type stuff, communications.
From the States?
Marketing from the States. Marketing of the product would be, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And they can reach out.
Fundraising,
Awesome.
yes.
They can reach
Yeah.
out on the links.
Yes.
And
yes,
do you have an
there's-
Instagram page?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you.
Thank you.
Listen, reach out to these guys. And do people come visit ever?
They do. We get a lot of visitors.
Okay, so you can go through the
You
website.
can get, you can, yes, and contact us and
But
come. And
not if you're a weirdo.
Yeah, no
Then don't do
weirdos.
it.
Well-
no weirdos, right?
that kind of limits.
No, it doesn't.
There's a lot of
It doesn't. Don't be a weirdo. And go and visit and go to the website and do all the
Yeah,
things.
we have a great coffee shop that is in the red light area, but we have live music nights. So, like, bring a team, do live music.
Okay.
We open up the doors to the street.
We had Jake Hamilton
it's
one
so
time.
much fun.
It was fun.
I just talked
It's
to
so
him
much
over the
fun.
weekend.
It's
Jake
fun.
Hamilton.
Yeah, Jake Hamilton came and played in the coffee shop.
He's the best.
It's awesome.
He's the
It
best.
was amazing.
I love him. And I love you guys. And I love you guys. I got to end this because we've gone way too long. So bless you guys. Thank you, team. Thank you, you guys.
Thank you.
The
Thank you.
Dieselbergs, plural. And I love you guys. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Iris Global Green Room. It was about 2 hours.